Okay, let's go on to the next slide. Okay. We'll talk for just a few minutes. We're going to go through these slides pretty quickly. We'd like to have an early lunch today so that we can get back. There's more time for questions at the end. Making contact, that is exchanging information with other beings. Particularly in this context, it would be non-physical beings that aren't embodied here. You should begin if you've not done this before, you should start your initial breaking the ice, if you will, with the persons you're going to contact, with some very straightforward, simple questions, things that you want to know, or something that you would like to find out, or something you'd like to know about. And it may be just as simple as, is anybody out there? I'd like to talk to someone who is more knowledgeable about the larger conscious system than I am, and who would have my best interest at heart, or who is more caring and more loving than I am. This sort of thing. Now you've kind of narrowed your intent to a subset of all the stuff that's out there. You only want those that have more experience than you and who are not there to give you a hard time, but who are there to help you out. So I would have some in your mind of what you want to accomplish. And then again, we're talking about you sending a query to Google, right? And if it's wide open, Google, tell me something. I want to, some information from Google. Well, that's, you're liable to get any kind of thing, and it's unlikely that it's going to be useful. So first, have some kind of sense of really what you're interested in and what you want to do, and the bounds that you can put on it for your connection. And that would be where you'd start. And you have some sort of intent of what you'd like to get out of it. Why are you doing this? And you can add that to it. What's your purpose for making this connection? Put that out there too. Here's my purpose. This is what I'd like to get out of it. This is the kind of beings I'd like to talk to. Anybody out there, wish to talk to me? Or would be willing to talk to me? So that's a good start. Bound it, have a purpose and intent, state all of that up front, and see what happens. Try to make it simple. A 15-minute speech is not what I'm thinking of here. I'm thinking of 2 or 3 sentences, a short paragraph, something that's straightforward and not too complicated. Okay, expect to get a telepathic response. Expect not to get a linear response. You should just get information. Now, the thing that most people have a tendency to do is, first thing they do is want to know a name. I'm Joe. What's your name? And they'll you get this sort of thing from them, because in the non-physical, they don't go by names. It's not a name thing. We have names here because we're all separate, discrete, and the name is like it's our name, right? It's the thing that attracts our attention when our name is called and so on. An intention to connect to that being connects you with the being. You don't have to say, hey, Joe. But if you ask them for a name, if they're used to people from this kind of a reality frame, they'll make up a name and give it to you. Or maybe they'll just have one that they use for times like this. If they're not too used to people from realities like you, they'll not really know how to respond to that thing about a name. But if you keep pressing them for it, they'll make one up because they understand that's something you want and need from them. So they'll just say George, or anything that you interpret as being a name. They'll just give you something. But sometimes they'll just shrug and won't know how to respond because names isn't. People are known by their substance, by how they are. And they're located by intent, not by looking up in a directory. So name isn't that important. And when you talk with them, remember you're talking in big picture terms. You're not talking in little physical matter reality detail terms. You're talking in big picture terms. You're talking conceptually. So have concepts, have big pieces of conceptual material that you send out rather than details. Get to the big picture part of what it is you want to communicate and just communicate the big picture part rather than a lot of details. Then listen. Just be open and listen. And this is the hard part for most people. Just open yourself up, get your intellect out of the way, and don't judge it. Just be open. And not so much open at the intellectual level as open at the being level. And this is kind of ground that's hard for people to understand. What is this intellectual level, being level? When we get to that, I think in a couple of slides, I'm going to talk about that a little bit more. But anyway, you listen and you communicate at the being level, not the intellect. I mean, we told our intellect to sit down and be quiet. We can communicate at the being level. We can have concepts at the being level. We can send that data out from the being level. It's just an expression of who we are at the core, what we think at the core, the concepts we have at the core. That's communicating at the being level, as opposed to the intellectual level, which is constantly analyzing, putting things in categories, comparing, judging, that sort of thing. That we want to not do. Okay. Keep it simple. Simple, big picture, conceptual. Matter of fact, in the beginning, it might be easier for you if you just ask questions that can easily be answered with a yes or a no. That would make it makes the response real simple on their part, right? You talk like a lawyer. Lawyers ask questions that can be answered with a yes or a no because they don't want the person to go off on their own and say things that they don't want them to say. So just yes or no, and that makes it simple. But you can go beyond that some places. Go with a topic in mind. If you just, I'm going to go talk to somebody and I'll figure it out when I get there, you probably won't do as well as if you first think about it. Why am I doing it? What do I want to get out of it? What's the point? Get all that kind of in your head and then do it and work it from the being level. It'll work better. The biggest mistake that people make in conversations and contacts is that they try to judge the data too quickly. If you have a contact, you can always ask, can I make a contact with you again? It's good to have continuity. And almost always it'll be a yes. And you probably then have the tendency, well, how can I reach you? Like what's your phone number or, your name or something. And basically the answer will be just think of me. Just have an intent to connect with me. That's all you need to do. That's how you bring them up on the web page. That's their URL. It's just your intent to connect with them. So then connect with them again and again. And after you've had 10 or 20 conversations with this entity, now it's time to judge. Now you get that intellect up, put your intellect on, start judging, analyzing, deciding. Not, is this being outside of me or inside of me? Is this my imagination or is this something outside of me? That's not the question. The question is this interaction valuable? Is this interaction valuable? If the answer is yes, then we don't really care where it came from. If the answer is no, then we really don't care where it came from. Either way, it's not important. If it's valuable, and then keep with it. Eventually, in time, it will become clear to you that you're having a conversation with an entity that is not your imagination. But that takes time. You have to kind of get to know them and get to know where they are and what they're about. And then you can determine whether that is within your boundaries to be that. If that is outside of your boundaries, then it's not you that you're talking to. If that's well within your boundaries, then it might be. It really doesn't matter. You see, you are a part of the consciousness system. So you can connect to the consciousness system in multiple ways. So this burning desire to know, is this real or am I making it up, is not really the right question. It's, is this useful or is it not? Does this help me understand? Is this interesting? Am I having fun? You know, these are the questions to ask, not, is this real? We've got this sense of needing to know that it's real, because if it's not, then we're just fools, right? We're talking to ourselves. It's not the case. We're trying to grow up, and whatever helps us grow up is valuable. And it doesn't matter really where it comes from. We can help ourselves grow up sometime, and that's good. We don't want to reject that just because that's us. So that's not the burning question, but you will come to an answer of that question eventually. But don't make that the question that you need to answer as soon as possible. Make that a question that you figure out after you've had enough experience and collected enough data to be able to actually give it a good analysis as to source. But the source is not all that important. Remember, you're interpreting what you get in terms of pattern matching from your own database, your own experience. So realize you have that limitation. So when you get things that seem a little odd, you can ask again and see if you can't maybe get a different metaphor for it, or stay skeptical of how you interpreted it. Often you'll get a feeling from it, a sense of it, that is more true and more correct than what you turn it into later when you try to describe it in language or try to describe it to somebody else. It comes out and it's not really the same thing. You described it to a friend as best you could, but you realize the description is really not it. And what is it? Well, you can't describe it because you don't have a pattern that matches it exactly. So some of your knowledge that you get is going to be knowledge that's non-intellectual. You can't put it into language. That doesn't mean it isn't valuable. So realize that you can learn in other ways besides just intellectual ways. It's not, what does my intellect now know that it didn't know before? It's not a good question. You have to look at it deeper than that. What you're learning, what you're getting out of it, may not be something that you can intellectually describe, but you should be able to understand it at a being level rather than an intellectual level. Okay. Healing, we've done this, so I won't have to spend much time there. The only one of these that I probably need to go over, we've talked, I think, about all the first 6 bullets. For maximum effect, if you're healing and you really need and want to have a desire to heal this person as much and best you can, what you should do is heal often and even continuously if you can do that. That means you do the healing like we've done. I've shown you a whole bunch of techniques. I've just thrown them all at you at once. Not that I think you should use them all at once. Throw the ones away that you don't like. Use the ones that seem to fit, and then better yet, make up more of your own that fit you personally. But you do that, and then afterwards, keep it in your mind. Keep it in the back of your mind. And sometimes people say, what do you mean keep it in the back of my mind? How do I do that? Well, here's an example. Let's say that you had a very, very important meeting, right? Maybe it was a new job and you don't have a job, or something that's really important to you, and it's at a certain time at a certain place. Well, you keep that in the back of your mind. So maybe it's 6 o'clock in the evening somewhere, and all day long you're doing this. You're looking at your watch because you don't want to be late. You don't want to miss it. It's important to you. It's in the back of your mind, and all day long you know that this evening I've got this meeting. you're kind of processing on that, you're thinking about it, you're wondering how it's going to work out, you're doing scenarios, you know, your little intellect is yapping about that all day long because it's something that's very important to you. You wouldn't miss it. You look at your watch every hour to see, do I have to start yet? You know, do I have to get ready yet? Do I need to get the train? What if the train's late? Maybe I better take an earlier train, you know, and you're doing this. That's what I mean by keeping it in your mind all day long. It's just there. You never let it go. You're aware of it. You heal someone. Keep this healing, keep this bright white light in their system all day long in the back of your mind. And then every hour or two, take 30 seconds, a minute at most, and just think of them. Think of what you saw, the dark and the light and so on, and give a little more energy to it. Give a little extra bright light on it. 30 seconds, all it takes. You don't have to sit down and get in a meditation state or anything. Just stop, put your attention on it, send a little something. Next hour, get another 30 seconds. Most of us can spare 30 seconds an hour. And we just do that walking down the hall, right? Going out to the water fountain. You know, you have 30 seconds, you can do this. And then you can sometimes get it down to like 10 seconds, 5 seconds. Just spend a little thought on it often. And then maybe midday or maybe that evening, go back to your meditation thing, get back into it, spend, 15, 20 minutes if you want. Healing, just putting white healing energy, healing intent is really what you're doing on that. And you can even think about it at night. Think about it the next day. If you do this for 2 weeks, immersing yourself in this healing for 2 weeks, you will have an effect. If you're going to have an effect, you will have it. It doesn't mean that you always get the effect because the other person may not want your healing. Or the probability may be 1 in a million that this person is going to be healed, and you only change it to 1 in 100. Well, that's been a massive change, but it still didn't get much of an effect. So you don't necessarily, you're not in charge of everything. There's other variables going on. So you may or may not, but if you do this, most of the time, you will have a very noticeable, sometimes dramatic effect. If your healing is just a one-shot thing, all right, I meditated, I did it, and I'm done, and you never think about it again, you might have an effect. But unless you're very strong with your intent, the probability of you having a very strong effect is small. You see? Now, the other thing about healing is that it's cumulative. So if you and 10 other people do this for 2 weeks every day, now the effect is 10 times greater because you've had, it's a cumulative effect. So healing in groups is even more powerful. But you can be pretty powerful on your own if you immerse yourself in it. And you might think, gee, that's a lot of effort. All day long, all day, all night for 2 weeks, that's a lot. But it's not that much. Eventually, it's just second nature. It's just what you do and how you are. And it's not a burden at all. It just seems like a burden in the beginning. Okay. Parallel processing, next slide. Remote view. There we are. Okay, parallel processing is really what I was talking about there when I said just take 30 seconds and go do this. You're kind of parallel processing. You're operating in the non-physical while you're still aware in the physical. That's parallel processing. Your parallel processing gets easier and gets more powerful as you are more able to control the noise in your mind. For that 30 seconds that you're helping to heal this person, you need to just let go of the rest of the reality. So for that 30 seconds, it's just you and that black spot and your light, and that's it. Nothing else is there. You just focus on that. So you're kind of there and you're not here anymore. So you are really parallel processing in 2 reality frames for a short period of time. That gets easier the more you practice it. And one way to practice it is to practice your meditation in all sorts of different configurations, standing up, lying down, walking around, etc., to where you can get in a good meditation state anywhere, anytime. You don't need the headphones, you don't need the sound, you don't need the incense, you don't need the quiet, you don't need it dark. You just need to have the intent, and you can do it. And that will be very hard at first, but just one step at a time, and you keep working on it, have the intent, and it'll eventually come. Then when you have a strong intent, what that means is you have learned to control the noise in your mind easily and quickly. You can just tell it to be quiet, and it's quiet. You can do your healing for 30 seconds, and then you can turn it back on again, and you're back in this world. You see? So practice your meditation in all sorts of environments. And it will go from impossible, couldn't possibly work, to, well, it's working a little, to, hey, I can do this. And just keep working at it. Okay, next slide. Fear and negative beings. This is a thing that gets a lot of people anxiety. Okay, sometimes they're exactly the same thing. Probably at least half the time, 2/3 of the time, they're exactly the same thing. Negative beings are often a metaphor for your own fears. And you'll find that a lot of when you get to out in the larger conscious system, in this out-of-body state, a lot of the things you fear, like the wall that you fear that won't let you come back, that's your own fear. Well, that wasn't a being, but sometimes it's the three-headed being with the long teeth. That's your own fear. So often, these negative beings you run into are your fear. Not always, though. Sometimes they're a very convenient scapegoat, somebody to blame. You know, we kind of do that. We have problems and we find somebody to blame them on. That's what an ego does. You know, so sometimes we have problems and we can say, oh, it's the evil entities in the non-physical, they're making me do this or do that. That's why I'm so rude to you. It's not me. They make me be rude, you know, and we use those sorts of excuses. There are entities that are negative. What that means is they are de-evolving. They're not evolving to the positive side. They are de-evolving, or they started out in a very low place and they just haven't gotten very far yet. So there are negative beings there. And the thing that will attract them to you, the thing that will enable them to connect with you and communicate and share their not so nice stuff with you, is your fear. If you have no fear, it is very difficult for them to interact with you. If you have no fear, if you don't have ego and you don't have fear, then you're like Teflon coated. They just can't get a hold. They can't get into your energy because there's nothing there to latch hold of. There's nothing there to connect to. There's nothing that they have. They're full of fear. They're full of fear, they're full of ego, and they have to connect into fear and ego because that's what they are. They're full of fear and ego, they're not going to connect into your love and peace, right? Because they don't have any love and peace. They connect into your fear and ego. That's how they can connect. So if you don't have it, then they can't connect. They connect in you in something that resonates with them. So the best thing to do is, again, get rid of that fear, get rid of that ego. Otherwise, you may find a little trouble there. But all in all, I'd say the probability that you will have a problem, that some sort of non-physical negative entity will bother you or hurt you or cause you distress is very, very low. It's not like it's a real scary place out there. You're more likely to get mugged walking through, the park at night here in this physical reality than you are likely to get mugged in the non-physical. It's safer there than it is here. But that doesn't mean there aren't risks. But the risk is made real because of your own fear and ego. Again, put the horse out in front of the cart. Get rid of the fear and ego. You say it's the thing to do. Fear will ruin your ability to interpret your experience accurately. And the last one is you generally can't get to where you don't belong. So that's kind of the self-policing. If there's this part of the reality that you just will really do badly in and you can't handle and it wouldn't be good for you to be there, it's probably a place you couldn't get to anyway. You know, the children get locked in the backyard. They don't necessarily get to just wander out in the street, play in traffic. So it's like that. So you probably can't get to those places that you really wouldn't want to get to. You can get to them once you can play in traffic safely. Next slide. Don't get unbalanced. Don't make the non-physical the major part of your life. Make it a side issue with you, not the main issue. The main issue is here, interacting with people. Sometimes people who spend too much time in spiritual practice become recluses, become withdrawn from other people, because now they have this high vibration and they don't like to mess with people with low vibrations because it brings them down and this kind of thing, so you get kind of better and more refined and pure, and you don't want to mess with the unpure masses. That's all nonsense. Okay? Where you learn is by interacting with people, all sorts of people. Everybody brings you a lesson. Everybody challenges your ego and your fear. So it's the choices you make in interacting with people is where your growth is. And the more you retreat, the more you kind of drop out, the less likely you are to grow. So the people who are so grown that they have to drop out completely because the unwashed masses are, yucky. These are people who probably think they're grown more than they actually are grown. It's probably more of an intellectual process than a being level process. If you're really grown, you care about people and you connect with people. So you can interact with everybody and profit from that. If you're not learning so much from them, perhaps you can help them find an environment where they can learn from you. So there's always a good reason to be interactive. So don't make the spiritual an excuse to separate yourself from the rest of humanity. The more spiritual you are, the more you need to interact with the rest of humanity, the more you have to give. So it's not often we see the monk that sits in the cave. That's okay perhaps. I'm not saying that that's an awful thing to do, but if you sit in the cave your whole life, if that's something you do for 20 years, you're probably kidding yourself. You may get a lot out of that in one way. There's parts of you that could grow a whole lot in that. You could learn patience. You could learn independence. You could learn lots of things that would be good for you. But you're not going to learn how to react when somebody does something rude to you, when somebody kicks you in the shins, when you can't find something to eat, when the baby is crying all night. You can't get any sleep. You won't know how to deal with those sorts of things. So you can grow some ways, but not other ways. A well-rounded person that can connect with people and share is a more grown person. A person that can only connect with other people who are kind and gentle, is missing out on some opportunities to grow and to help. So stay balanced. Don't get unbalanced. Here's a question I used to get a lot. I don't get it quite so much anymore. They say, Tom, tell me, what do I need to know about the future? And the answer is absolutely nothing. You don't need to know anything about the future. The future holds all your challenges, the things you're going to have to deal with. Well, have to deal with them. Knowing about them kind of interferes with how you deal with them. If you know about them, then you probably got to deal with them with your intellect, because you'll have a plan made, right? Now I know this is coming, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do that. Pretty soon your whole life is led out of your intellect. And you defeat your purpose for being here, which is stuff happens and you get to deal with it. Knowing the future is just not all that helpful. Future information tends to exacerbate fear, tends to make fear and ego worse. People worry about the information. Oh, there's going to be a big earthquake. Oh, you know, we'll be ravaged by fire and earthquakes and other kinds of things. When's that going to happen? Where's the safe zones? Where do I have to move through? Well, all this is fear, fear, fear. You can go to the internet and find as much of this as you can stand, right? Where there are people who have fears and share them with us, you know, on the internet. And other people will get wrapped up around that, and it becomes a big part of their life. Conspiracy theories are all about fear. Doesn't mean that there aren't real conspiracies going on somewhere in the world. It's just that fear isn't a productive response to them. So you just let that go. You don't need to know anything about the future. You will be wherever it is you need to be when whatever it is that's going to happen happens. And you will deal with it as it happens. And if it happens that you're at the wrong place when the earthquake happens, well, as they say, that's life or that's death, however you want to take it. And it's just not that big a deal. You'll deal with it and you'll go on, and then you'll have another incarnation, and you know, you have to just not take that too seriously, that it's that big a deal. This is a chapter, you know, this lifetime is one chapter in a very long book. And you'll deal with it, do what you can, and you'll go on. Whether it's the next lifetime or whether it's more of this lifetime isn't really as important as you might think. So don't worry about it. So that kind of getting to the point of saying that the fear of death should disappear. Eventually, it's like, well, death comes. You know, everybody has that to look forward to, and it'll come when it comes. When it comes, you'll deal with it. You'll go on. See, it's not the big end of everything. It's actually the beginning of something else. So that's another way that will help you be less fearful. If you understand that, if you realize it, and you'll get that when you get out in these larger reality systems. One of the places you can go that would be educational for you. Here's an address that you can ask to go, or that you can intend to go, and that's at the transition virtual reality, where people who have died are being transitioned into another experience packet. It's a good place to visit. You can take the tour. Maybe they'll even put you to work, you know, so go visit there and see how that works. See, and you do these things, and pretty soon this idea about reincarnation or experience packets and, you know, death not being a big thing starts to become part of you at the being level. And it just isn't that big a deal. It's just part of this cycling that we go through, you know. Life and death and life and death, and so on it goes, and that's what we do. It's our job. And it's just 11:45, and I think we should stop for lunch here.